Thank you for everybody who is able to join us live today. And for those of you who are catching this recording, welcome. My name is Jason Miller. I'm Chief Evangelist and Principal Consultant here at Creatio. Today, I'm going to be hosting a roundtable discussion with a couple of gentlemen who are going to introduce themselves here in just a second. This is about bridging technology and operational synergies. It is really a guide to C-suites to help you understand what the power and benefit of integrating your core technologies and other financial service technologies into a CRM and how it's going to drive business value. Joining me on today's webinar, I have Sky and Chris. Sky, if you can introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, I'm CTO and co-founder of Sandbox Banking. I like to say that if you have any problem with our technology or product, it's always my fault. Um, at Sandbox, we make it quick and easy to integrate banking systems so that they can talk to each other. Very excited to be partnered with Creatio, and very excited to have First United Bank and Chris Blyden as a customer, and very thankful for his support and usage of our platform.
Very good. Chris.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chris Blayden. I'm a project manager at First United Bank and Trust. I led the migration for the bank last year to migrate from our two legacy CRM platforms onto Creatio. I also oversee the current enhancement initiatives around the bank to try to, continue to bring value to the bank with the Creatio platform. And we went live with Creatio back in October of last year. So we're still kind of developing this system and refining it as we go along.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for joining us today. And really the goal today is to have a little bit of an open discussion. And we're going to cover a few variety of topics. And these are going to be some of our key discussion topics. And I would encourage anyone, if you have questions, we will try to do some Q&A towards the end. Go ahead and put your questions into the chat, and we'll do our best to respond to them towards the end. But today we're going to talk about kind of these 5 areas, right? We're going to talk about CRM integration with core banking systems and why that's valuable and why that's important. We're going to talk about customer engagement and how to think about driving customer engagement using the information that's exposed and available from your core. We're going to talk about how this informs data-driven decisions and helps you with your decision-making processes. We're going to talk a little bit about future trends and innovations in the banking space and how financial service organizations are using things like AI to help be better at what they do and serving their customers. And then finally, we'll kind of give some thought leadership and some advice for financial service leaders that are either joining us live or in the recording today. So without further ado, let's get started. Kind of interesting first way to start, which is, really talking about how and why integration with your core banking system is important. And as we get started here, we'll start with you, Sky. What are some of the key benefits that you think that banks and other financial service organizations can really expect from integrating their core banking products with CRM? And, what are maybe some already established solutions that are on the market to help them do this?
Yeah, so in terms of talking about key benefits, you really need to be loading core data into your CRM at some level to get much value as a bank or credit union out of your CRM at all. If you can't look at the CRM and see some representation of a customer and the various products that they have with your institution, that CRM is very likely not going to be very useful to you. Now, some of that seeding is really just to ensure that the reporting gets right, and it can be handled in terms of batch uploads that happen once a day or multiple times a day, but aren't necessarily real time. But then there are other use cases for CRM where to be able to support a customer who's like on the phone with you or has a ticket open with you or whatnot, you really, really need a complete up-to-date view of that customer. And so if you look at the work that we do throughout the marketplace, integrating cores with CRMs, there's a bunch of kind of batch upload work that loads data in bulk. And then there's a bunch of what we call real-time 360 work, where data is dynamically retrieved on the fly to ensure that there's an up-to-date representation of customer records in the system. And by doing that, you can ensure that employees of the bank can have a single pane of glass onto what the relationship with the customer is, And of course, that translates to a bunch of cost savings downstream, as well as operational correctness. And ultimately, I think for most of our customers, most importantly, it just means a better customer experience, whether it's on the marketing side, on the sales side, or just in a support capacity as well.
That's an interesting thought. So, Chris, to you, a similar topic, but what are some of the things that you've already started to see benefit from, and what are some of the additional benefits that you're hoping to gain in the future as you continue to roll out some of these integrations?
Right. So I think the big difference that we had with Creatio and a modern CRM versus what we had previously is just the flexibility and being able to not just pick up core data, but pick up data from our other platforms. I think there's definitely an expectation for customers where if you talk to somebody else from your organization, they would kind of expect, even though you may not have had the initial conversation, for them to still have a good idea of what's going on, what's part of your customer journey, what's on your mind, and being able to pull in data from not just our core but other systems, and put all that in one place in front of the associate helping the customer at that time has definitely been helpful at eliminating blind spots. And kind of the same mindset of what Sky's talking about. It's mostly just kind of a hygienic factor. You need to just avoid say losing face with those customers.
Yeah.
That's an interesting point. I think that a lot of times financial service organizations, they'll maybe use the core or they'll use the CRM that comes with their core, right? Now that those are okay with looking down through the core, but to your point, you're losing that full 360-degree view, right? If you're not connecting your retail and your commercial side, you're not connecting your wealth or your loan origination system and really having that full view of the customer, you do miss out on opportunities. Or the other, or worst case, your employees are busy bouncing from system to system to system, trying to find this information to be able to service the customer that's sitting there waiting patiently on the phone, in person, whatever the case is. So I agree with you. Having something that looks across all those systems is extremely beneficial. Chris,
Yeah,
back to
I mean,
you or I'm sorry, Sky, back to you on this one. When we think about some of the challenges that these solutions solve for, right? Have you run into challenges with getting connected to these different systems, or is some of the work that you guys are doing at Sandbox specifically really helping break down some of those barriers that have been there in the past?
yeah, I mean, that's definitely part of the value proposition of our business and our platform. And traditionally, even getting access to the type of middleware that you would need to either, to interact with core processors in a real time basis is challenging. A lot of times you'd need site to site VPNs. A lot of times they have pretty bespoke and unusual authentication protocols and what I would say different kind of technical interaction mechanisms that need to be resolved. And the nice thing about our platform is it ships with a bunch of adapters out of the box so that you can set up your connectivity to the systems pretty quickly and easily. And
So
it ships.
sorry, go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But we
Okay.
try to ship with as much as we can to kind of expedite that connectivity process.
Well, I think the other beauty too, and the other value prop is even as organizations go through technical updates, right? If they're going to do a core upgrade or they're going to replace their LOS system, your platform really has connectors to just about everything to be able to expedite that process and make that even seamless. It almost helps future proof against technology debt and some of those things. And that's kind of the other question that I had for you, Chris. Over at First United, as you were able to start putting these things in, obviously you recognize some benefit from a workflow standpoint and some of the productivity gains that you were hoping to employ and better empower your employees. How's that going so far? And what are some of the biggest things that you've seen as a benefit thus far?
Yeah, I have to admit it's been a busy year getting everything set up, but now we have everything at a stable setting. We're actually able to look forward into some of like the more exciting efficiencies that we can kind of gain for these platforms. So one of the things that we were able to do recently was just, I know it kind of sounds boring, but it's like the little things that add up, I think, was a consumer doc prep request form. So traditionally, an associate that needed to close a loan would have to submit a document to our underwriting group by finding a template, downloading it, copying in that user information from the LOS and from the core onto this document, and then submitting it to underwriting and then emailing to follow up with underwriting to make sure that that's happening. But what we were able to do with Creatio and the integrations that we have today is essentially just set up a sheet where they can go through, pick the document that they're trying to set up and send, have it pull in all that information that they've already entered into the lead for the sales process or from the customer's record on the file, and automatically populate that, and then pull some, logic in the background so we can kind of set it up to work different ways with variables to either show the associate more fields that they need to fill in or make fields mandatory so we're not getting hung up on things that were missed. And then when everything's completed and they hit save, it automatically sends an email to the underwriters with everything that they need to go ahead and get this taken care of. So there's less back and forward, there's less missing pieces. And like I said, a consumer doc prep form isn't the most exciting topic, but it's just like a little efficiency that we've been able to kind of pull together. Some of the
I
other
think
things that we
that's
do is, I'll go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that that's a really big one because, I mean, this is just one example, but really trying to minimize that ping pong. It's like, oh, I need more information, right? A great example, home loan. I'm actually going through this process right now, making sure that the customer fully understands and whoever is doing the loan app understands all of the different pieces of information that are needed. Being able to auto populate a lot of that from the core systems, also being able to make sure through logic and business process that those things are captured really helps streamline that process to really reduce rejection rates, reduce reentry, right? Those types of things really drive some productivity. And I know you had a couple other examples you were going to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, another one that we're kind of proud of is from a compliance perspective, whenever we have an associate opening up a case for something like an ACH dispute, there's certain messages that we just need to make sure that, we're conveying to the customer at that point. So we can just set up, targeted little pop-ups that'll show up on their screen, just remind them, okay, you need to let them know that there's a specific timeline that they have to, do any follow-ups on. Once again, I'm not going to talk about super exciting stuff, but it's the little efficiencies that kind of help cover us and help make sure that everybody's got the best face on, and they're not trying to scramble through to find whatever the regulation is while they're talking to the customer who may not be having a good day if they're filing an ACH dispute.
Yeah, I'm not a professional banker by trade, but I'm sure that the folks in the financial service industry that are hearing you speak about this today and in the recording are actually going to be excited to hear that some of those things can be automated and those pains can be kind of taken away a little bit. Let's continue this discussion and let's talk about customer engagement. Sky, I'm going to start with you. When you think about no code CRM and integrating with them, and how can this really help financial service organizations drive better insights and really understand customer behavior better?
Yeah, well, what it does is the no code aspect, and I'm kind of fixating on that, Jason, but the no code aspect of it frees the institution to drive forward those initiatives without having to engage engineers, right? They have the building blocks out of the box so that the business themselves can construct like the data pipelines, the the data entry forms, anything that they need to ensure that those insights, the data necessary for those insights gets to the right place. And then those insights can ultimately be derived. And it's the same thing with any aspect of the customer experience itself, or the employee experience for that matter. So yeah, that ability to own one's own destiny and innovate as business problems arise, as opposed to having to deliver everything in a very heavy-handed, slow, waterfallish fashion. Um, I mean, that really drives speed, and more speed and delivery means faster learning at the end of the day.
I think it also means more reactive to as consumer or account holder behavior changes. It allows you to not only see it, but it allows you to react to it so that you can, whether it's mitigate risk, you can provide better customer service, those types of things. I think they're really important. I just actually got off a call with a bank out west, and one of their big problems and challenges that they're having is the ability to really understand, especially with the volatility around interest rates right now, to
Yeah,
understand how to manage and be proactive to protect the financial service organization as you've got these deposit accounts that you've had to raise the interest rates on. As interest rates start to come back down, how do I manage that? How do I engage with my customers to be able to better protect the financial service organization while still giving them a good level of service. And
Yeah, I
Chris,
mean,
I'll come back to you real quick, and then Sky will come back. But Chris, when you think about some of the things that you guys are doing over at First United, how has bringing Creatio and this no code capability, how has that benefited you, and ultimately, how's it benefiting both your employees and your customers?
Well, I think for us, a lot of it's really just building up that whole customer relationship and a one-stop shop. We need to have our source of truth on that and be able to kind of keep tabs on every touch that we've had with the customer. So that's really the gold standard that we're trying to pursue there, is just to make sure that we're always, aware of anything that's going on with the customer, regardless if it's, from a different line of business. It just makes it easier for our associates to do their homework if they're going out for a meeting with a customer, to go up and pull up that relationship and see, just everything that's going on with them. And then, we even have samples of some of our marketing materials that might have gone out to the customer, because sometimes they come in and, there could be flyers. Sometimes there's fraudulent flyers, but it's good to just be able to have a record of that, logged up against that, so we can see, who's talking to them and making sure that it is us.
That's fair. And Sky, you had some additional thoughts.
well, I mean, it's just a simple matter of like the more that you can build and the more you can build with a greater group of people, the more that will be automated, both from employee experience, customer experience, and really kind of operationally speaking as well. And so that just means that the resources you do have, the human personnel you do have, can do higher level work as well. They can actually engage with customers. They can actually do the insight derivation that's necessary. Um, so again, like at the end of the day, that's going to make a big difference.
I think that one of the things that we hear at Creatio a lot, from different financial service organizations is how do we know when, how, and what our customer preferences are for how to engage with them, where to engage with them. I think this is one of the things that Creatio is also really good at, which is the ability to have that flexibility. If a customer wants me to email, I'll email. If they want me to send them a text message, I'll send them a text message, right? And ultimately that type of behavior changes over time, but we're able to give that flexibility to organizations as well, to be able to do all that type of omni-channel communications. And a lot of organizations, I think, struggle with that because, consumer demand. Another customer of ours, it was very much an older customer base, right? And the millennials and the zennials, it's a different type of behavior, and having tools that allow you to be flexible and allow you to engage with them and have that right information, especially the younger generation. They expect high level customer service, and they expect that you have the information, right? So I think that's another big aspect for customer engagement. Either of you, any other final thoughts on customer engagement before we move on? No? Okay. So let's move on to kind of high level topic three, which is data driven decision making. Now, I think that this one is such an interesting topic, and we could probably spend a whole hour just on this. But I've got, two or three questions here that I think are topical. So let's start with Chris this time. When you think about being able to make good, effective decisions, regardless of what type of decision it is, how do you see a no-code CRM that's really integrated with all these things, giving you more data? How do you see this making a big difference for financial service organizations?
Well, I think probably the coolest thing that we've kind of discovered with being live, since October, was that there's a lot more transparency in the data. When I make decisions, I like to look over my shoulder and see what other people are doing and what they're kind of coming up with. So what that kind of makes the translation, I guess, for the CRM is, if you're, over managing a branch, you can kind of look around and see what other branches are excelling at. You can see which products or programs or services they're having a higher success rate and how they're having those higher success rates. And maybe comparing that to what you're doing, maybe there's a few things that you can tweak and try to coach your staff through to try to, make sure that you stay on top and, being a, higher performer within there.
No, it's fair. And then, Sky, when you think about not only gathering the data and displaying the data to be able to make these good decisions, what are some of the biggest things that you think your customers see when they actually have the ability to pull all this data together?
Well, the from my perspective, what they see in terms of the insights, and that may vary quite a bit from customer to customer. And what I would hope they see though is kind of consistent output of their analysis, no matter what system they're looking at. So, I mean, when I think about data-driven decision making, a lot of this is driven by the quality of the data and sort of the consistency of that data throughout the various systems in an organization. And so, you know, in terms of our customer base, like part of our mission is to make sure that that data is both consistent and correct, not just in the CRM, but across CRM, core loan origination system, deposit account origination system, all the data marts that might be used for making these types of decisions as well. So, I won't pretend to sit here and have great knowledge of the exact nature of the insights that our customers derive, but we want to just make sure that they're working on a foundation um, that is fruitful for deriving correct insights. Does that make sense?
It does, and just for those folks who may not be familiar with sandbox banking, how does the product that you're bringing to market, Sandbox itself, how is it really helping organizations to get this data? And we talked kind of at a high level about what Sandbox does, but can you give us really what is it that Sandbox does to really help enable these things?
Yeah, so what we do is we make it really easy to move the data around between the systems, either on demand, real time, or in a batch manner, where often you're importing records in bulk. The way we do that is that we provide a lot of pre-built components out of the box, like connectors to the various systems, as well as like pre-built integrations between different constellations of systems that are commonplace in the market. And then we provide a low-code builder, so that while our own solution delivery services can deliver the integrations, in many cases, our customers themselves can do the last mile customization for their institution. And so basically, we connect systems faster and kind of more robustly, correctly, than the other platforms in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that Creatio partnered with you guys is not only do you have all of those key components around integration for all of these different types of systems that financial service organizations use, but you've exposed it in such a way that's very much aligned to what Creatio does, which is empowerment, right? It's
Right.
it's the ability to easily get this information, collect it, and use it for a wide variety of reasons. And then, one more topic here, and Chris, I want to come back to you from a First United perspective. Has there been anything that's come from this new exposed data set that has made you rethink your strategic decisions or change anything within your business that it's going to change really the growth strategy or the trajectory that you guys are on?
I think right now it might still be a little bit early for us to say that we're making any, sweeping decisions. I think that we're still learning a lot with this system. Previously, we did have access to our data and reporting capabilities, which I'm sure, any other financial institution, on the call probably already has, and we're, absolutely not doing away with those. But what we do have is a lot more data at the points of, not just the highest level of users, but pretty much every user throughout the system. So, if you wanted to be proactive, you could absolutely go through and start trying to do a little bit of analysis or starting to maybe engage with some of the admins of your system and try to pull out, different extracts or reports if you're looking for niche populations or, different trends that might be occurring around the bank. So it definitely makes data kind of part of everybody's job moving forward, as opposed to just, the highest level of decision makers who can, have their own data teams go in and dedicate to pulling reports. It's data, available all the time.
I think I'm thinking of another customer that we have at Creatio, and one of the things that they were able to really achieve, not only through it wasn't so much that it was the data that helped them make this decision, but they felt more comfortable after they were able to bring all the data together that they were making good decisions. So they had already strategically decided that they were going to add a new line of business. And the data kind of supported it. They were able to see customer queries, they were able to see customer feedback forms, and better bring it together so that across, four different kind of areas of the business, they were able to see commonalities within the customer feedback and the different services that were being provided, whether it was CSAT surveys or whatever, that reinforced some of the decisions that they were planning to make them feel a lot more comfortable with adding that new line of business. So I do think that having data readily available at your fingertips, regardless of the source of it, whether it's the core banking, the LOS, wealth, whatever, all of these pieces provide a data point that can be used to inform, that can be used to assist, or it could be used to ultimately change your mind and help you realize areas that maybe you weren't as good in that you thought you were, or as you thought you were. And this is really the point in pulling data together. So let's move on just a little bit. And I want to move over to future trends and innovation. The first question I would ask is by show of hands, not really, but virtually. Think about this for a second. How many of you have heard of generative AI? I would think that just about everybody has, right? It's literally the hottest topic in the world today. And whether it's producing images, producing content, emails, I even saw a thing the other day where it'll generate voices or do things in somebody else's voice. It was very interesting. I learned to our senior vice president of solution consulting, Tony Durso, is obviously a Taylor Swift fan. He created a presentation we did together in Taylor Swift's voice the other day. It was very interesting. If you attended our no code days in Florida, you would know that. But when we think about future trends, Sky, I'll start with you. What are the future trends that you foresee when it comes to integrating data, and specifically within financial service technologies and the no code space? I mean, we could talk Gen AI all day, but this is just one of those trends. What else are you seeing out there?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the kind of the AI aspect of this. So if you think about generative AI or deep learning in general, at least in the integration space, there are two bets of which I'm pretty confident. One is the fact that a lot of the future integration logic, heck, a lot of the future software in the world is going to be written by AI. Some of that will be boilerplate, but a lot of the boilerplate is going to be informed by knowledge of specific industries, knowledge of specific APIs that are fed into the models at the end of the day. So, I mean, obviously, we're looking to incorporate AI within our product. I know that's true of other integration products as well. And, optimistically, we're looking forward to a world where like Glue cannot just save you, 80% of the time to get an integration live. It can save you 99% of the time. Like we may be able to get very close to a 20x or 100x savings on speed to market. So that would be huge. There's another, in terms of AI though, I mean, there's another deep impact that I want everyone to be aware of. Like, I truly believe that it's going to create in the future massive efficiencies for banks and massively different ways that both employees of banks and customers of banks are going to interact with the financial institution. But in order to realize that reality, you're going to need banking specific models that are trained on a particular institution's data or have the appropriate guardrails and permissioning. There's a lot of complexity that goes into that. Well, those models are going to need to be trained on and ultimately query over data sets. Those data sets better be pretty comprehensive and they better be pretty correct. And so that, again, that's going to propagate the need for additional integration in the future. So AI, at the end of the day, I expect AI to kind of build, to grow the need for integration within this particular market. CRM data is, of course, going to be very critical to the innovation that will be unleashed. Anyway,
so Chris, before we move on, what are some of the things that you're kind of either hoping to see or within your CRM, or what are some of the things that you're hoping to gain from technology like artificial intelligence?
Artificial intelligence is a little bit of a touchy subject with some folks around the bank. There's definitely a lot of regulation that's going to be going into it. And I do like that. I see with Creatio moving forward, they're kind of developing a ecosystem that allows it to be a little bit more isolated and not quite automatically ingrained with every other aspect of the application. And I think that's something that we're going to have to kind of keep an eye on moving forward and making sure that we can do that and ideally be comfortable with the rails that we have. Change is scary, but Gen AI definitely seems like it's not going away at this point. It's an inevitability, it seems. But something else I'm kind of seeing is just a lot of the other applications. It seems like they're more willing to kind of fragment out and sell them to you piecemeal. We've kind of always prided ourselves in doing a best of breed for different platforms and applications for providing services for different lines of business. But even with our core banking service provider, it seems that they're a little bit more open to allowing you to maybe unplug their digital application and plug in something from another service provider. And that definitely is kind of changing the way that we think about the core banking as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely an important trend. The cores have kind of across the board, um, at least attempted to make APIs more accessible to external applications and developers. I mean, for example, you see this with CoConnect with FIS, you see it with Communicator Open with Fiserv. And so I do think the overall trend for integrate that will also drive a trend where integration will get easier and faster over time. But you'll still need plenty of middleware and orchestration logic and translation logic to effectively automate processes. APIs are never enough in and of themselves.
It's interesting. So, Chris, the stuff you were talking about is something that we talk about here at Creatio a lot, which is the idea of composable architecture, right? Being able to take independent blocks and allow them to operate on their own or work as part of a larger ecosystem, part of your kind of big block architecture, right? To really drive the most efficiency that you can. I will tell you that I think from my standpoint, I get to talk to a lot of different customers. I think that the two major trends that I obviously see is Gen AI, but I also see a lot more, we talk about data, right? And pulling all this data together. I also see a lot of traditional AI use cases continuing to grow, right? So it's not just about generative, it's about, and here at Creatio, we take this composite AI approach. So using both traditional AI and generative in the same place and for working together. We typically call it a composite AI approach, where we got all of these predictive scoring machine learning type models being able to interact and be part of the inform to these generative AI scenarios. I'll give you an example, right? Maybe if I'm looking at similar cases, or I'm looking at predictive scoring for case closure time, right? Being able to use that to feed generative scenarios. One great example, and this is such a simple one, but it's amazing that people don't do it. We know the predictive score that says, hey, this case you opened is similar to these other three cases, and these took 2 hours to resolve. We should be able to use that to create a customer-specific email that says, thank you for opening a ticket. We anticipate resolution for your case in about 2 hours. That's a traditional and a generative use case working together, right? And this is amazing because it allows you to not only for you to have data that's going to drive yours, it allows the organization to use data that they already have to engage and inform the customer as well. So it's not just about informing and empowering employees. It's also about informing and empowering customers. And that's just one example, but I do see both traditional and generative AI use cases growing at exponential rates. And the data topic we talked about just a little bit ago is helping inform that. It's helping drive more of those. Customer service, I think, is an area where generative AI scenarios are going to work heavily. I think traditional AI is going to be playing heavily on things like next best offer, next best action. What do I need to do? I think generative scenarios will also be covering things like holistic data analytics, right? When somebody's looking at graphs inside the bank, being able to understand what they're actually looking at, you can ask Copilot to be able to say, what should I be focused on? Where should I be spending my time? So I do think that both traditional and generative are both pretty major trends that people are really starting to drive home. And at Creatio, we announced Copilot about 6 months ago, and it's out for beta now. It'll be GA a little bit later this fall. What's so interesting about it, though, is the fact that even though you're right, Chris, I think some organizations are taking a little bit of a wait and see. I think 23 was a year of ideation, specifically around Gen AI. 24, I think, is a year where people are putting their toes in the water. And 25 and beyond is going to be where they start to exponentially ramp the use cases for AI holistically. Any thoughts from either of the two of you on that?
I mean, I think that it's hard to predict the timelines around adoption here. Um, I when you talk about like the use cases, I mean, one of the big questions I have, right, is whether it's enough to have these different AI components, these co-pilots and chatbots embedded in every single system, because a lot of vendors, myself included, are trying to do that embedding right now. Or do banks build their own? Do they have models that span multiple systems and multiple data sets and are able to do some of these operational components of a bank? Um, I feel like the timelines for vendors incorporating some of these capabilities in their systems is going to be a lot faster than sort of the cross-system deployment of these technologies. Uh,
I think that, when I talk to Gartner and Forrester a lot, the things that I'm hearing from them is I do think that industry specific large language models that are covering a lot of these generative cases, I do think that some organizations will build their own. I do think that some organizations are going to leverage things like OpenAI or Blackbox for kind of the content
mhm,
creation, emails, communications, those types of things. But I do think that industry specific LLMs will be used. The good news is Creatio, we're taking a bring your own LLM approach if you don't want to use our out of the box, which is fine. I'm never going to force it upon anybody because I do see a lot of scenarios where organizations are going to use multiple LLMs for different use cases. So having the ability to have those and leverage those different LLMs for those different use cases, I think is a very important thing. Before we wrap off this topic, Chris, any final thoughts?
Uh, Not really, just basically maintaining the flexibility, especially with a modular approach, so we can kind of adjust as regulations are, passed through the chain. It seems like that's something that, at least this year, our auditors were very interested in. So I think it's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on moving forward.
Yeah, I think audit and compliance is also another area where a lot of organizations are looking for flexibility and they're looking for automation tools. I'll take this 1 second to plug that, here at Creatio, we have a dedicated governance application that sits alongside Creatio to do all of this type of governance framework, over 100 pre-built kind of GRC checks, but ultimately giving the bank flexibility to build their own checks, right? Whether it's looking for anomaly detection, right, lightweight AML to be able to trigger and then do your deep level AML searches. These are all things that Creatio is trying to help drive innovation for as well. All right. This is our final scripted topic. And I do encourage, if you have questions or you have thoughts or maybe a topic that you'd like us to discuss, please feel free to put it in the chat. But I want to kind of wrap our early portion here with advice. So
mhm.
I'm going to start with you, Sky. What
Okay.
advice would you give financial service leaders who are considering implementing a no-code CRM solution, or better yet, any CRM solution, and why is no-code a differentiator? Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the pieces of advice that I would give people is be ready to kind of, I mean, if you're putting in a CRM, the CRM is your source of truth about your relationship with the customer. It affects the entire bank, up and down the leadership stack, right? It's a C-level concern, it's an IC concern, it's a concern for every level in between. And so you have, everyone wants the implementations to be fast, everyone wants the integrations to be fast, but you have to just wrap your head around that this is going to be a change management exercise that's going to take buy-in from every level. Now, in terms of the tactics of an integration, what this means is you'll want to make sure that you've budgeted, not just financially to get the integration done, but also in terms of personnel. We we can ship a ton of functionality out of the box. And our platform's motivated to do so, but every bank is different. Every credit union is different. And so you need to have subject matter experts lean in and be available to make sure that the customization for a particular institution occurs and occurs correctly and occurs in a timely manner. Um, I would say when you have a separate integration platform and provider than implementation provider, you want to make sure that those two teams are in lockstep throughout an implementation project. You want to bring them both right in the beginning. You want to make sure that they have sort of what I would call conjoined project plans that work together cohesively. I know Creatio, you guys as a CRM partner, you do an incredible job at this. So I tip your hat to ensuring that that happens. Um, and ultimately, like those two parties, CRM, implementer, integrator, and institution need to be on the same page about what systems are going to be connected every step of the way of the implementation, which really thus also brings you into phasing. Um, it's a lot of change to manage. If you can avoid boiling the ocean, avoid boiling the ocean. Try to phase the rollout to deliver discrete units of business value that are as minimal in size as you can. And then that gives you the ability to build, deploy, uh, change manage, ensure it works, and then iterate, and then move on to the next thing. And you'll find that the total pace of creating value for the organization will be faster that way. Um, yeah, I mean, I would also just say, uh, you got to be prepared to learn along the way. You need to be prepared to, if you're putting in a CRM, it's not that you have all these things that you're trying to do exactly as you do today, but with just a different system. That's true of what happens in the CRM. It's true of how the CRM talks to other systems in your organization as well. So you'll want to also kind of while you're doing this, think about how things should work, not how do they work today for the organization. Um, I think those would be my biggest pieces of advice. The no code part of this allows you to get that work done faster, um, and ultimately with less reliance on big engineering team to get the implementation and integrations done right.
I think the it also gives you the ability to iterate faster. To your point, right? It's get that MVP out there, iterate quickly, learn along the way, and don't be
Yeah,
afraid. Don't be afraid if you don't get it 100% right the first time. That's where the flexibility is. You're not locked into, oh, this is the way I deployed it, and I can't make a change. I mean, there's
yeah,
some organizations that we work with that frankly, they'll make a change every couple of weeks to maybe one of their process flows, or they need to add a different data element or something like that. So, Chris, what has been your experience? And I also prompt you a little bit. I'd love you to talk a little bit about what Sky mentioned, which is the right integration partner, because I know you had a really good experience with Solutions Metrics.
Yep, definitely. So it's been a monumental effort trying to migrate, two legacy core CRM systems into one. And if I'm being honest, my expertise was not, in Creatio no code software or, the best way to set this up because, like Sky mentioned, every bank is different, every credit union is different, but even within one institution, every single department is different, and they've got different expectations on what the CRM is and what is most important with it and where the data needs to lie. So it really helps having a little bit of extra guidance and trying to set up all the data fields. That way it can be a little bit more future proof and you're not constantly going back and revising and maybe eliminating. And then you end up with a bunch of either broken modules or just fields that are just unnecessary noise in the system. So it definitely is a game changer having some consulting help and getting everything together. I don't really think that I can say too much more than what Jason Sky already mentioned. Yeah, I feel like you guys just pulled the words right out of my mouth on a lot of it. You're really not going to make everybody happy on the first go around. You can try the best that you can, but ultimately it's a living platform. And
yeah,
part of the flexibility with the Creatio allows you to go in there if people are unhappy with the setup, you just go in and fix it. It takes a little bit of extra time, But eventually, I think that what happens also is people are learning as they start using the system, and maybe what they thought they wanted from the get-go may not be the case in a month.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I always love it when customers talk highly about Creatio, the product set, the benefits that you're achieving, as well as some of the implementation help. And there is a question from Darren Conklin, and I'll take this one. So when we think about Creatio clients, we have financial service organizations from just about every aspect: banking, credit union, wealth, insurance, well, you name it. Organizations as small as a couple hundred million in AUM to organizations that are 200 plus billion AUM. This is kind of the flexibility that Creatio and the no code tools help provide. Now, I will tell you, this is as the principal consultant here at Creatio. Every bank is different. Everyone has uniqueness. It's not because what you're doing is different. You're all running deposit accounts. You're all running loans. Most of you are running commercial and retail. But the way in which you're delivering these things, the tools you have to engage with your customers, your level of sophistication based upon the information that's made available for you. These are the things that are truly impacting organizations at the different levels. I've seen organizations that are, a couple of billion, even 5, 6, 7 billion in assets under management that frankly operate less efficiently than some organizations that are 500 million in AUM. Reason is they grew so fast, they didn't have the processes and they didn't have the tools in place to manage their customer data well. This is what Sandbox and Creatio are helping customers solve for. Bringing the data together, providing full visibility of the customer engagement, that 360-degree view, or as Sky mentioned earlier, a single pane of glass, helping to eliminate shifting from or jumping from system to system. Ultimately, these are the types of things that successful organizations do well. First United is a great example. Now that they're up and running on Creatio, they have started to see some of these benefits already by consolidating this information, as Chris has talked about today. I think that the advice that I've given today and Chris has given today and Sky's given today are meant for general guidelines, but they work for organizations of all sizes. Whether you're a multinational bank, whether you're a small community bank, it doesn't matter. Best practices are best practices. And having full visibility to your customers, having good member engagement or customer engagement skills and data to back those things up is the way that organizations need to be thinking about how to set the stage with their no-code tools, their process tools, their CRM, and ultimately being able to integrate it with tools like Sandbox to make it all visible. Gentlemen, I will open up the floor. We got just a couple minutes here for closing comments. Guy, you first.
Well, first, Jason, Chris, thank you both, for being a partner and then being a customer. One closing comment I would have is that the deepening adoption of CRM is ultimately extremely exciting for us. What it represents is a shift in the industry to focusing more on the customer. And I think we all want to live in a world where we are focused on by our service providers and providers of goods in the world, and that we have these excellent customer experiences. And if you look at our mission as a company, it's about ultimately providing innovation, allowing banking to get better and better as an industry. And so to the extent that we can enable CRM projects to be successful, to the extent that we can enable better customer experience and better bank efficiency through CRMs, it's extremely values aligned for our organization. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that this is some of the best work that we do. And, we would love to do a whole lot more of it.
As would we all. Chris.
Yeah, so with CRMs and middleware providers, there's definitely a lot of options out there. There's a lot, but I think that what we were looking for was just more composable options, ones that would integrate with some of the platforms that we already had and some of the platforms that we were looking into maybe expanding into in the future. So I think that that's really where you need to start is just kind of going out there, feeling out, and just trying to see, okay, do they have that integration? And then how deep actually is that integration? You really need to
Right.
pick at it because there were some larger ticket companies that didn't have as much or as robust as I might have been expecting from the get go. So I think at the end of the day, your institution's going to be a little bit different. Your integrations are going to be a little bit different, but you need to see which ones are going to be able to adapt to the specific connections that you need to make for your platforms. And then just real quick to piggyback onto the question from the chat, I've been to exactly one Creatio conference, and from that conference, we actually have a small Creatio credit union users group, which as a bank I find a little bit offensive, but I'm willing to look past that because there's a lot of knowledge that we're kind of sharing, and I think that we've got about 10 different financial institutions on there, and that's just from a one-off. So yeah, we may grow a little bit as time goes on, or maybe I'll just go back into my shell and stay back in my office. But either way, I think that it is something that there's more than one of us out there, and we are happy to share our experiences.
Yeah, I think that's funny. It's both funny and sad all at the same time because we've got lots of banks that you can connect with. It's just funny that just happened to be the group that you connected with. I think that the final parting words I would like to leave everybody with when we think about really the value that CRM systems bring. What is it? It's not just operational efficiency for banks. It's the ability to drive better customer engagement. I mentioned it earlier, being able to meet the customer and give the customer what they want, where they want it, and how they want it, whether that's through omni-channel communications, whether that's being proactive and reaching out to them with notifications, or whether it's being able to provide them with options because you understand them better based on these data-driven decisions. These are some of the things that I think organizations look at CRM and say, is there value in it, right? And I think a lot of times organizations have said, you know what, I've grown up to 4, 5, 6, 7 billion. Even I've seen organizations as big as 8 or 9 billion that don't have a CRM strategy. My argument to this one is, if you really truly want to drive the best in class customer engagement, having a CRM system isn't just one of those nice to have things, it's a must have thing. Because yes, you can service customers without CRM. However, you will not be able to be of as much value for those customers as you could be if you had that holistic view. The things that we talked about today are the fundamental pieces that CRM, no-code technology, integration technology like Sandbox, connecting all of these disparate systems, providing that holistic 360-degree view. This is the value that technology brings to your financial service organization to really help drive things forward. So if you're in a growth mode and you're looking to provide better customer service, eliminate churn. I won't say reduce, I'll say eliminate churn by providing best-in-class customer engagements. This is why CRM is the wave of the future and should be at the top of everybody's priority list. I want to personally thank my two guests for today, Sky, Chris. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being part of this webinar, both live and the recording that will be published very soon. I would like to thank all of you who attended both live and are watching this recording for later use. Thank you for being interested in Creatio, and thank you for participating and engaging with us during today's conversation. For more information, please visit us at www.creatio.com and www.sandbox.com to learn more about the integration capabilities of Sandbox and the no-code CRM that Creatio presents. I appreciate everybody's time. Go ahead.
Sandboxbanking.com.
Sandboxbanking.com. Thank you very much. Thank you for correcting me on that. www.sandboxbanking.com. I knew I was going to screw something up today. Thank you for fixing that. And for those of you who want more information about the banking products that Creatio offers, it's creatio.com/banking. For the credit union customers, it's creatio.com/credit unions. We look forward to seeing you on our future events and maybe one of our no-code day events in your area soon. Thank you for joining. Have a wonderful day.